This morning, America's first news starts right after this. Great news. There's a quick way you could save money. Switch to Geico. Geico could help you get great coverage at a great price, and it only takes 15 minutes to see if you could save 15% or more on car insurance. Go to geico.com today and see how much you could save.
From Compass Media Networks, this is America's First News. This morning, with your host, Gordon Deal.
Evacuations in central Michigan. Good morning, I'm Gordon Deal, along with Jennifer Kashenka, on this Wednesday, May 20th. Glad you're with us, and here's what we have for you this hour.
2 dams have breached following heavy rains north of Lansing, leading to evacuation orders. The worst of the flooding is expected by this afternoon.
More government lockdowns are easing in states like Ohio and New York. However, there's a Justice Department warning about restrictions in California.
The Trump administration has declassified an email from former National Security Advisor Susan Rice. Hear why Republicans are seizing on it.
And why an estimated 100,000 employees of cruise ships remain stuck at sea.
It's important to remember that the industry thought they were shutting down for a month. They were prepared for a 30-day halt on operations. Well, mid-April came and went, and the CDC actually banned cruising through at least the end of July. And so now we're in a situation where more than 100,000 crew members are unable to get home.
Taylor Dalvin at the Miami Herald on limbo for crew members who've been floating for 2 months. 2 dams in central Michigan have collapsed following heavy rain, leading to evacuations. Governor Gretchen Whitmer declared a state of emergency for Midland County and said downtown Midland could be under 9 feet of water by this afternoon. The city is about 80 miles north of the capital of Lansing. The governor last night said parts of the city of Midland and Dow Chemical had been or were being evacuated due to the breaching of the Edenville and Sanford dams. Tens of thousands of people are potentially affected by flooding along the Tittabawassee River. Midland City Manager Brad Kay.
The consequence of living in a river valley, of course, is that we have to deal with river floods at times. This, however, is something that would be unprecedented.
Several dams upstream of Midland had either been breached or were releasing water uncontrollably after 4 to 7 inches of rain fell Sunday and Monday. The Associated Press said emergency responders were going door to door early yesterday morning, warning residents. Some were able to return home, only to be told to leave again. More states are easing lockdown restrictions in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine says he's lifting the state's stay-at-home orders and replacing them with an advisory, encouraging residents to stay in their homes whenever possible and continue social distancing. As New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy rolls back some restrictions, he's also looking at schools.
If there's hope out there that in some form, folks at some point in the future, not crazy distant future, can gather for graduations. If you've got that hope, I have that hope as well.
In New York, the region near Albany was cleared to enter its first phase of economic reopening today. In neighboring Connecticut, some restaurants can now resume outdoor dining. West Virginia will take further steps tomorrow, letting more customers inside restaurants. Meanwhile, California has been told by the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division that its staggered reopening plans treat churches and religious services less favorably than restaurants, factories, and malls. The coronavirus crisis once seemed to be the kind of gut-wrenching shock that would pull together a politically divided nation. Increasingly, though, it is pulling the nation apart along familiar lines. Jerry Seib, executive Washington editor at the Wall Street Journal, says to see why, start by looking at how the pandemic's effects are falling along partisan lines, leaving people on both sides of the red-blue divide now feeling they are bearing unfair burdens. Jerry, explain.
Well, I think it was unifying for a while, but I think it's become less unifying as it's become clear that the disease, the virus, is not falling evenly across the country, but as it happens, is falling along the red-blue divide in many ways. And that has produced a lot of tension about who's responsible for it, who's paying for it, and how fast do we reopen. And just a couple of statistics that kind of illustrate the division in the way the disease has struck unevenly in the country. So you have 26 states with Republican governors, 24 with Democratic governors. So the country is almost evenly divided right down the middle in that sense. But the coronavirus is not hitting those states evenly by any stretch of the imagination. 2/3 of confirmed cases are in states with Democratic governors. And when you measure the sheer number of cases, 6 of the top 7 states with the most cases have Democratic governors. They have about half the nation's cases, but only about 1/3 of the nation's population. So this is a virus that is hit much more heavily in blue areas than in red areas. And so the views of what it means and how we spin out of it are almost by definition different as a result.
You referenced these uneven political reactions about the pandemic's burden. Explain what each side feels.
Well, there's a red view that's understandable and a blue view that's understandable. That's an oversimplification, obviously. But as a general proposition, red states look at the country's economy having basically shut down, ground to a halt, hurting everybody for a virus problem that they simply don't think is as severe as the reaction justifies. Because in their states, in many cases, in their communities, in many cases, it just isn't. And so they think they are bearing an unfair economic burden because of a problem that really lies, for the most part, elsewhere. And blue states look at this, we're all in it together kind of rhetoric that we used to hear, or still do hear in some cases, and think, well, not so much, because their states are getting hit much harder by plunging tax revenues and higher medical costs, and they've looked to Washington for some help, state budget and local government help, and they've gotten some, but Democrats now want to provide almost $1 trillion more, and Republicans in the Senate do not. As a footnote, as it happens, if you live in a heavily populated blue state, you feel that you're unrepresented in the Senate because every state obviously gets 2 Senate seats. And if you look at those 6 states, blue states that have been hit hardest by the virus, they have more than half of the cases, but only 12% of the votes in the Senate. So blue states see an imbalance there. So both sides have a grievance. And as this drags on, those grievances have become more prominent.
We're speaking with Jerry Seib, executive Washington editor at the Wall Street Journal. His piece is called Why Coronavirus Increasingly Exacerbates the Red-Blue Divide. Do you think that the divide trickles down to some of the issues being debated in terms of restrictions like masks, social distancing, or even the use of hydroxychloroquine or vaccines?
I don't think there's any doubt about it. I mean, I think that the whole package of steps that blue state governors feel they've had to take are now the subject of debate, and in some cases, almost scorn from people who think they amount to an overreaction. And I think it's, again, I think that's unfortunate, because I think it's fair to say everybody went into this crisis without a playbook, and a lot of people are just trying to do the best they can under very trying and unprecedented circumstances. But I think there is a tendency now on both sides to question the motives and reasoning of those on the other side. And again, as I say, that's, I believe, unfortunate, and maybe it was inevitable, but it's too bad.
Thanks, Jerry. Jerry Seib, executive Washington editor at the Wall Street Journal. 14 minutes now after the hour on This Morning, America's First News.
Dell Technologies has special business savings right now to help you office everywhere and stay productive. Save up to 45% on desktops, laptops, and do-it-all servers with Intel Core processors. Upgrade to new modern devices with Windows 10 and save on essential electronics. All with free shipping on everything and special financing with Dell Business Credit. Call 877-ASK-DELL for a Dell Technologies advisor who can help you find the right tech. That's 877-ASK-DELL or visit Dell.com/smallbusinessdeals.
Thanks for being with us. The declassification of an email has led to more finger-pointing by the Trump administration. On the day of President Trump's inauguration, outgoing National Security Advisor Susan Rice sent herself an email that has since drawn intense scrutiny. Now the full text of the email has been declassified, and Politico reviewed it. It says that then FBI Director James Comey worried about sharing classified information with the Trump team because of incoming National Security Advisor Michael Flynn's frequent conversations with the Russian ambassador, but that Mr. Comey had no knowledge of Mr. Flynn actually sharing classified information with the envoy. Reaction from President Trump.
What they've done to General Flynn should never happen. What they've done to the presidency and what they've done to this country can never be allowed to happen again to our country.
Republicans have seized on the document as potential evidence that President Obama had ordered the FBI to spy on the Trump administration, as Mr. Trump has alleged. Meanwhile, a spokesperson for Ms. Rice said it shows the Obama administration handled the Flynn situation appropriately. It's 21 minutes after the hour on This Morning. Here's Jennifer Kashenka.
And now, the three big things you need to know. Number one.
Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin and Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell offered Congress contrasting views of what the government's most urgent priority should be. Mnuchin warned that prolonged business shutdowns would pose long-term threats to the economy, from widespread bankruptcy to long-term unemployment.
Working closely with the governors, we are beginning to open the economy in a way that minimizes risk to workers and customers. We expect economic conditions to improve in the third and fourth quarter and into next year.
Powell stressed that Congress must consider providing further financial aid to support states, localities, businesses, and individuals to prevent an even deeper recession.
Number two.
Republican political operatives are recruiting extremely pro-Trump doctors to go on television to prescribe reviving the economy as quickly as possible without waiting to meet safety benchmarks proposed by the CDC. The plan was discussed in a May 11th conference call with a senior staffer for the Trump re-election campaign, organized by an affiliate of the GOP-aligned Council for National Policy. A recording of the hour-long call was provided to the Associated Press.
Number three.
Rapidly rising water overtook dams and has forced the evacuation of about 10,000 people in central Michigan, where Governor Gretchen Whitmer says one downtown could be under 9 feet of water today. Families living along the Tittabawassee River and connected lakes in Midland County have been ordered to leave home.
Please, do not hesitate. Go stay with a friend or relative or get to one of these shelters now.
There were catastrophic dam failures about 140 miles north of Detroit and 7 miles downriver. A federal judge has ordered Texas to allow any of the state's 16 million voters to cast a ballot by mail. The ruling paves the way for what would be one of the most dramatic expansions of mail-in voting in the country. Republican Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton says he'll appeal. Texas will hold primary runoff elections in July. The 152nd running of the Belmont Stakes in New York will be held on June 20th, making the Belmont the first leg of the Triple Crown for the first time ever. It will be held without fans. The Belmonts will be followed by the Kentucky Derby on September 5th and the Preakness on October 3rd.
Wow.
Flip that around.
Yeah,
it's the opposite.
So if you win the Triple Crown, is there an asterisk next to the horse and jockey's names?
I don't know. It's still the same three.
Let me tell you about my new favorite way to pass the time while commuting. It's the app called Blinkist. Blinkist works on your phone, your tablet, or your web browser. Blinkist takes the need-to-know information from thousands of nonfiction books and whittles it down to just 15 minutes. Successful people like business leaders are well known for reading self-improvement books. I just finished listening to Snowball, a Warren Buffett biography. Listen to Blinkist while commuting or maybe exercising, even while you're waiting for your kids to finish practice. Blinkist has the latest titles from bestseller lists as well as the classic nonfiction titles you always meant to read. I also like listening to some of the history titles since I never had much good history in school. Right now, for a limited time, Blinkist has a special offer just for our audience. Go to Blinkist.com/morning to try it free for 7 days and save 25% off your new subscription. That's Blinkist, spelled Blinkist. Blinkist.com/morning to start your free 7-day trial. You'll also save 25%, but only when you sign up at Blinkist.com/morning. Thanks for being with us on the personal finance front. How can we as Americans come out of this pandemic crisis without being financially devastated? We're joined now by Chris Mansky, financial advisor and author of the upcoming book, The Prepared Investor. Chris, what are you hearing from clients?
Most people, when they're talking with us, they're thinking about when is quarantine going to end? How will that affect the portfolio? And for the most part, those are positive impacts. You know, the stock market is a forward-looking indicator, and the virus and the quarantine, they're not done with us yet, but we're already beginning to look beyond that. And certainly the stimulus has helped out a little bit with that.
Do you have a feel right now for whether or not we're in a V or a W type of economic recovery?
A W would not surprise me at all. I mean, something as simple as Mother Nature changing the virus. You know, these things adapt, they change, and as they metamorphosize, we might see some new wave of frustration and fear, especially since